Welcome to AI Book Highlights.
Great to be here.
Ever get that feeling that, the things you really, really want
Mm.
maybe didn't just pop into your head out of nowhere?
Yeah. That uncanny feeling.
Well, today we're getting into a book that tackles exactly that. Rene Girard's Deceit, Desire, and the Novel. It's quite a groundbreaking work.
Absolutely. We're going to unpack his big idea, this concept of mediated desire.
Right, the idea that our desires are often, inspired by other people, by models or mediators, not just spontaneous.
Well, look at how Girard sees this playing out in classic novels and what it tells us, really, about ourselves.
So our plan is to pull out 5 key highlights from his analysis, then wrap up with 3 actionable takeaways for you. Ready?
Let's do it. So the core idea, Girard's main argument, is that desire isn't usually this straight line between us and the thing we want. Instead, it's often shaped by someone or something else, a model, maybe even a character in a book, someone we look up to, or maybe even envy.
Consciously or unconsciously, you mean?
Exactly. And this sets up what he calls a triangle. There's the person desiring the subject.
That's us.
Right, you.
No.
Then there's the object, the thing you want.
Okay.
And crucially, there's the mediator, the one whose own desire, real or imagined, points you towards that object and makes it seem desirable.
Okay, so that's the first big highlight, this triangle of desire. Let's make it concrete. Don Quixote, classic example.
Perfect example. His desire isn't just, I want adventure.
No, it's much more specific.
It's mediated, right? It's filtered through his obsession with those chivalric romances, particularly the hero Amadis of Gaul.
So Amadis is the mediator. He's the model Quixote's trying to emulate.
Precisely. And because Amadis is the model, suddenly ordinary things get transformed. A barber's basin.
Becomes a legendary helmet of Mambrino. Yeah.
Or Master Peter's puppets become giants or whatever. The desire for the object is sparked by the mediator's perceived world.
And it even applies to Sancho Panza, right? His desire for an island to govern.
That doesn't come from Sancho himself initially. It's planted there by Don Quixote's promises, by his mediated fantasies.
It's interesting because we usually see them as total opposites, the idealist and the realist.
Yeah, the romantic reading often misses that. But Girard points out they both borrow their core desires from an other. Quixote from Amadis, Sancho from Quixote.
And this borrowing, this mediation, it can really mess with your perception of reality, can it? Leads to a kind of paralysis of judgment.
Absolutely. Both of them get locked into this view dictated by the mediator. Makes you think, doesn't it? How much are we seeing through someone else's desires?
It really does. Which leads nicely into our second highlight, literary suggestion and Boverism.
Right. Girard argues that literature itself isn't just reflecting desire. It's actively shaping it. It has a seminal function, as he puts it.
And the go-to example here is Flaubert's Madame Bovary. Emma.
Oh, absolutely. Her romantic dreams, her yearning for passion and luxury, where do they come from?
Not from her dull provincial life, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, they come straight out of the sentimental novels she devoured as a young woman. Those heroines become her mediators.
They set her expectations, right?
Mm.
And reality just can't measure up. It kind of destroys her ability to find genuine satisfaction.
Exactly. And this connects to an idea from another thinker, Jules de Gaultier, called Boverism.
Okay, what's that?
Gaultier's idea is that some people lack a strong internal sense of self, what he calls autosuggestion. They don't generate their own desires or self-image strongly from within.
So they become susceptible to outside influences.
Precisely. They're almost fated, in a way, to follow external suggestions, to imitate models. Flaubert's characters are brilliant at this.
How so?
They don't just admire models, they actively try to become them. They copy their clothes, their gestures, their way of speaking. It's all about trying to see themselves as they are not, as Girard puts it, trying to live up to that mediated image.
Wow. That's a powerful idea. Literature is this engine of imitation.
It really is.
Okay, so highlight number 3. This is where Girard distinguishes between different kinds of mediators. External versus internal mediation.
Yeah, this is a key distinction. External mediation is when the model, the mediator, is distant. They're outside your immediate world.
Like Amadis for Don Quixote. He's a fictional character from another era. There's no way Quixote could actually meet him or compete with him.
Exactly. There's a huge gap, social, temporal, maybe even ontological, like between reality and fiction. So the mediator isn't a rival.
But internal mediation, that's different.
That's where it gets messy. Internal mediation happens when the mediator is close, someone in your social sphere, someone you could actually interact with, maybe even someone you're competing with.
Ah, okay. So they could be a rival.
They very often are the rival. This is where Girard brings in Stendhal's novels, like The Red and the Black.
Right. Characters like Julien Sorel.
Yeah, think about Julien's relationships with Mathilde de la Mole or Madame de Renal, or even the rivalry between Monsieur de Renal and Valena over status, and eventually over Julien himself.
So in these cases, the desire often gets tangled up with what? Vanity.
Vanity is huge in Stendhal, according to Girard. The vaniteux, the vain person, often desires something because they see a rival, someone they secretly admire or measure themselves against, desiring it too.
So the rival's desire validates the object, makes it seem more valuable.
Exactly. And it's not just about getting the object anymore. The vanity demands that the rival must be defeated. The desire becomes triangular in a very competitive way.
Unlike with Quixote, where Amadis is just this abstract ideal, here the mediator is right there, potentially wanting the same thing.
Right, which leads directly to competition and often to intense negative feelings.
Which brings us perfectly to highlight 4, the ambivalence of hatred and envy. Things get darker here.
They do. Because in internal mediation, that drive towards the object gets all mixed up with feelings about the mediator, the rival.
How so?
Well, the person desiring, Girard calls them the disciple, sometimes is often fascinated by the model, the mediator. There's an underlying admiration. But because the mediator is now also a rival, potentially blocking access to the desired object, any obstacle feels personal. It's not just bad luck. It's seen as the mediator's fault, as ill will.
Ah, so you get this weird mix of feeling.
A really potent mix. On one hand, there's this almost submissive reverence for the model because they embody something desirable. But on the other hand, there's intense resentment, malice, even hatred because they stand in the way.
That sounds like envy, but maybe more complicated.
Girard thinks so. He actually takes issue with how some philosophers like Max Scheler viewed envy sort of isolating the feeling. Girard says envy only really makes sense when you see the rival, the mediator, as the starting point.
Meaning?
Meaning it's not just, I want what you have, it's that the rival's possession of the object is what makes it so desirable and so frustrating. Because deep down, you admire or look up to that rival. Their having it feels like a personal slight from someone whose validation you secretly crave.
Wow. So the rivalry doesn't kill the admiration, it just twists it.
It absolutely twists it. And paradoxically, the rivalry often increases the mediator's prestige in the eyes of the desirer. It makes the object seem even more valuable because this admired, hated figure possesses or desires it. It strengthens the whole mediated bond.
That's a really complex, almost self-defeating cycle.
It can be incredibly destructive.
Okay, let's move to our 5th and final highlight. Romanticism versus the Novelistic. This is about how different kinds of literature handle this whole mediation thing.
Right. Girard makes a distinction. He says, romantic works often show the effects of mediated desire, the intense passion, the obsession, but they tend to present it as spontaneous, as originating purely within the individual. The mediator's role is kept hidden, or at least downplayed.
So the focus is on the feeling itself, the transfiguration of the object by desire, but not the source of that desire.
Exactly. It conceals the mechanism. Whereas novelistic works, which are the main focus of Girard's book, do the opposite. They reveal the mediator. They expose the triangular structure, the imitation, the rivalry. They show the genesis of the illusion, as he puts it.
Can you give an example of that shift?
He uses Stendhal again. Stendhal's earlier writing, like his treatise on love, describes all the passionate symptoms of desire, the crystallization around the loved one, but frames it as largely spontaneous, more romantic in Girard's terms.
Okay.
But then you get to his great novels, like The Red and the Black or The Charterhouse of Parma, and the role of rivals, vanity, and social comparison, the internal mediators, becomes absolutely central to understanding why characters desire what they desire. That's the novelistic revelation.
So the novels pull back the curtain that the earlier work left in place.
That's the idea. He also touches on Proust. Initially, Proust's narrator seems driven by this intense, almost inexplicable, spontaneous desire for things or people.
Like for the actress Boverism.
Right. But as the novel unfolds, Girard argues Proust increasingly reveals the mediators, like how the narrator's desire for Burma is significantly amplified by the admiration shown for her by the writer Bergot, whom the narrator respects. The mediator becomes more visible.
So the truly great novelists, for Girard, are the ones who diagnose and reveal this hidden structure of desire.
That's essentially his argument. They expose the deceit involved in thinking our desires are purely our own.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, so we've covered the triangle, Boverism, internal versus external mediators, envy, and the novelistic revelation. Let's distill this into some actionable takeaways for, everyday life.
Okay, takeaway number 1. Try to recognize the mediators in your own desires. Seriously, take a step back and ask yourself, why do I want this specific thing, this job, this car, this relationship, this lifestyle?
Is it really me wanting it, or is it because I see someone else, someone I admire, or maybe even envy, who wants it or has it?
Exactly. Who are your models? Are they explicit, like a mentor, or implicit, like trends on social media, or maybe even characters from shows you watch? Just becoming aware of potential mediators can be really eye-opening.
It gives you a chance to check if that desire aligns with your actual values, rather than just echoing someone else's. Leads to maybe more authentic choices.
That's the goal. Okay, second takeaway. Be aware of Boverism in your life.
Right, that tendency to imitate external models because maybe we lack that strong internal compass Gaultier talked about.
Yeah. Ask yourself, to what extent are external things, media, influencers, social expectations, what your friends seem to value, shaping how you see yourself and what you chase after?
Are you sometimes performing a role based on an external script rather than acting from, your own genuine feelings or motivations?
It's about noticing when you might be trying to see yourself as you are not, like Flaubert's characters. It's not about rejecting all influence, obviously, but about cultivating more internal direction.
Makes sense. Find that balance.
Yeah.
And the third takeaway.
Number 3, when you feel strong rivalry or envy, try to analyze it for underlying mediation.
Okay, so don't just fixate on the person or the thing you're competing for.
Right. Look deeper. Ask, who is the person whose desire seems to validate this object for me? Why does their interest or possession make it so important? What is it about them that I might be admiring or reacting against?
So understanding that triangular structure can help diffuse the intensity.
It really can. It can give you insight into your own insecurities, maybe what you feel you're lacking, and why that specific rival triggers those feelings. It can help de-escalate things, mentally at least, and understand your own values better.
Those are 3 really powerful points to reflect on.
Girard's work definitely gives you a different lens to look through.
It really does. It's a challenging but incredibly insightful framework for understanding why we want what we want and how our relationships get shaped by these often hidden dynamics.
Becoming aware of that triangle of the mediators, it just opens up a whole new level of self-understanding and understanding of social dynamics, too.
Absolutely. So if this discussion has intrigued you and you want to explore Girard's ideas and his literary examples in much more depth,
we definitely recommend getting a copy of the book Deceit, Desire, and the Novel, Self and Other in Literary Structure.
it's a classic for a reason. We put a link to it in the description for you.
Well worth the read.
Thank you so much for joining us on AI Book Highlights today.
We hope this exploration has given you some new ways to think about desire, rivalry, and maybe even the books you read.
Until next time.